discussing mortgage rate, dispersion, renters' tenure, and the surge in median price per square foot. Today is Monday, June 3rd, 2024. I am Byron Lazine, and the hot sheet starts now. Welcome into the hot sheet. Let me know in the live chat which market you're tuning in from. Right down below is the subscribe button. It's absolutely free. It's painless. Go ahead. You can do it. Hit that notification bell while you're at it. Please share this with a friend, somebody who wants a 24-hour look back on the housing market. We do this each and every Monday through Thursday, 9:30 East, 6:30 on the West Coast. It's the only show on the internet that does a 24-hour live look back on the housing market. If you're listening to the replay on Spotify or Apple, we would love you to consider leaving a review. If you're a real estate agent and you want to be on the forefront of being an agent of change, somebody who's going to move this industry forward, happy Tuesday to you, then you should consider joining myself, the rest of the BAM crew, and some of our selected speakers, more speakers to come, at Circa Las Vegas on October 18th for BAM Mania. On October 17th, that Thursday, there'll be an all-day VIP session and cocktail reception. We're doing the Friday because there's nothing better than a weekend in Vegas. This is the must-attend real estate event of the year. Right now, tickets are in early bird pricing stage. $399. This is a ridiculous value. If you're a BAMX member, you get an additional 25% off of that, making it sub $300 for BAMX members for this limited time, as we are in early bird pricing stage still. Use code HOT to become a BAMX member and get a discount off of that. BAMX members, you have an exclusive code for your BAM Mania ticket. We have a link for BAM Mania down below. All right, let's get into it. Freddie Mac released their U.S. economic, housing, and mortgage market outlook for May 2024. Okay, we have an article on nowbam.com highlighting some of the mortgage analysis that came out of this. In fact, one of the interesting nuggets is this number, which was higher before, is still pretty high today. Over 60% of mortgage rates below 4%. This is how it plays out across generations. Okay, so kind of going down here to the chart, all these charts are available for you to easily download inside of BAMX for BAMX members. Use code HOT to get into that. More than 6 out of 10 mortgages have rates below 4%. That's at its totality. Mortgage interest rate at origination, active single-family owner-occupied purchase plus refi, conforming, and jumbo. It's all put in here together, okay? You've got almost 3 out of 10 that are less than 3%. That's an enormous number. It's a number that if anybody tells you they're waiting for, say, are you waiting for COVID-20? Because that's likely when that would happen again, less than 3%. Mortgages. Maybe COVID-20 is already out there, and I don't know. Maybe this, the replay of this YouTube is going to get banned just because I suggested that. But that's the facts. It would take some type of 100-year pandemic, some type of enormous outlier, which means there's a lot of pain in the streets. What's that song? There's blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. Somebody give me that in the chat. I forget who sings that. 3 out of 10 less than 3%. Those aren't coming back, but it's unbelievable that there's that many folks locked in on outstanding mortgages under 3%. Then you go 3 to 4%, you've got 33%. That's where you get that 6 out of 10 under 4%. Now 16%, when you add that on, are between 4 and 5%. Okay, boom, we've got it. Now you've got 62% plus 16 would be 78% are under 5%. The doors. Yes, very good. Is it the door or the doors? I think there's an S. I believe there's an S. I think it's the doors. Okay. 78% less than 5% on the outstanding 30-year fixed mortgage rate. There you go. Little typo. No worries. Typos on Tuesdays. Totally acceptable. That number of 78% at less than 5%, that number was up over 80. So there's been some movement on the market. The more this kind of, moves where this number gets lower And if the interest rate falls and gets lower, the more movement we're going to have in the market. Remember, we're back to 08, 09 levels of transactions. The last 3 years we talked about. Go listen to yesterday's the replay of yesterday's hot sheet if you did miss it at some point today while you're in the car or on a walk or doing your thing. Go listen to yesterday's replay. We do the inventory update, but right now, seasonally adjusted, we're at the lowest level ever for transactions. That's the last 3 years, especially when you factor in the current labor force. Think about 08, 09. Those of us that were there living it and were in the industry, remember how many people, or maybe any industry really for that matter, how many people were losing their jobs or lost their jobs already. And we were at 4 million transactions in those 2 years. Now we're at 4 million and jobs are seemingly very robust. It doesn't seem like there's many. I know there was a couple of layoffs announced yesterday, small layoffs. I think one from Microsoft and one of the other tech firms, but these are small white collar layoffs. Maybe there's a concern in white collar as AI is becoming more prevalent. I don't know. That there's some speculation on the internet, of course, that could be coming down the pike. But when you get laid off Microsoft, you're probably going to be fine for the next 6 to 12 months, I'd imagine. All right. 9% under 6%. So that bumps that up to, I think, if my math is correct, 87% have a sub 6% mortgage. Okay. Now taking a look here at generation. Millennials and Gen Xers have locked in the lowest rates. Millennials jumped into the housing market these last, from 2019 to 2022. They really jumped in a big way. Okay. Millennials, Gen Xers have locked in the lowest rates. Millennials, monthly payment, let's go monthly payment in the thousands, 1,900. Okay. 1,900 for millennials. Gen Z's at 1,600. Gen X is at 1,800. The boomers are at 1,500. Silent generations at 1,200. Okay. The remaining term, millennials obviously 25 years. Gen Z 27. Silent and boomers both at 18. Gen X at 20. This chart will be available obviously for you inside of BAMX, so you can grab it, use it in some of your marketing or follow up or CRM blasts. Remaining balance in the thousands. 273,000 tops for millennials. Now we know the median price point. That means there's a lot of equity out there still today. Unrealized equity, but nonetheless equity. Loan amount at origination was $290 for a millennial, so they haven't paid much of it down. Same thing with Gen Z, $224 to $218. Gen X, $283 to $250. Boomers, $229 to $193. Silent, $195 to $162. And a lot of these, listen, because refis are included in these numbers, so a lot of these loans are just very new. They're very fresh. And when you're, had the opportunity to refi or get into a new loan from 20 to 22, you took advantage of that. And so, of course, there's not going to be a lot of money paid down on these deals yet. 70% of millennial loans are conventional. 76% of Gen X are conventional. Boomers and silent, it's higher. It's 80+% on both. Everybody's at 4 except for Gen Z's at 4.9, who've been buying a little bit more lately. Obviously, a very small percentage of Gen Z are currently home owners. Their number is going to get higher. You might see Gen Z generation move a little bit quicker. Okay. Because they'll buy and then over time, hopefully, interest rate will move down. Gen Z right now has the highest interest rate, and I expect that number to get up over 5 as more Gen Zers buy throughout this year or next year. Certainly would make sense. While the average rate is lowest for millennials, Gen Xers, 4 to 5% have rates above 7%. Okay. Taking a look at this by generation, less than 3%. Gen X and millennials lead that with 31% being in that category. Between 3 and 4, it's pretty even. Take Gen Z out. There's a very Gen Z, by the way, is 97 2012 birth year. very few homeowners in that generation. So just take them out. But 3 to 4%, you really have a third of all outstanding mortgages in that range between silent boomers, Gen X, and millennials. 4 to 5%. Millennials have the least besides Gen Z, between 4 to 5%. Millennials really loaded up on less than 3% and 3 to 4%, as the Gen X took advantage of that. So both of them are kind of bringing up the rear against boomers and silent between 4 to 5. Some of the boomers and silent that had probably 4% to 5% in that, say, 2013, 2014 to 2019 timeframe. Maybe they locked in there when it got, maybe there was an argument when it got down to 2.5, they should have refied. But when it was sitting between 3 and 4, it's like, does it make sense for me to refi right now? So you could probably imagine that there's some that just kind of missed that opportunity, just never took advantage of it, whatever the case may be. And then you see the numbers really pop for Gen Z between 5 and 6, 6 to 7, and 7 greater than 7%, because they're buying now. Okay, they're going to be they still haven't really even entered. Gen Z hasn't entered their prime home buying years. That's still yet to come, which is why I believe those numbers will be higher. And I also believe that they'll probably move a little bit quicker than what we've been seeing other generations move, selling their home and buying the next one. It probably won't take them as long as some of these other generations. Obviously, the lock-in effect is going to hold up some of those numbers as well. Over 2 million mortgages have rates above 7%. That's again, or now that's actually in mostly Gen X. Surprisingly enough, over 2 million mortgages have rates above 7%. There's a great way to track that. Who's got rates above 7%? Who's got rates above 6%? Who's got rates above 5% in my community? We use PropStream. We actually have a link that you can inquire with PropStream about getting more information. But if you want to target people specifically that have a high interest rate, PropStream data is a great way to do that. We do that with our team all the time. What are some of the loans that are maybe vacant homes or non-owner occupied over 5%? Those could be opportunities. I don't know if Bobby, if you can find that link for PropStream and throw it into the live chat, I'd appreciate that for anybody who's interested in it. When you've got greater than 6.5%, or greater than 7%, you see boomers, Gen X, and millennials are making up the majority of that, while silent generation and Gen Zers has much smaller numbers on those 2 million mortgages that have rates above 7%. Obviously, that number will grow. Okay, that number could grow up over 3 million, I would imagine, just on basic math by this time next year. I'm going to go over to the hot sheet show notes. This is obviously available for everybody inside of BAMX. Every day we do the hot sheet. That's right. So many of you are using this as a copy and paste opportunity to get more information out of this show to use in your own marketing. I'm going to go jump over here and just take a look at some of the home purchases by generation. Home purchases by generation. Millennials saw 37% of purchases occurred in 2020 and 2021. Gen Xers, and that's where you've got some of those lower rates there. Gen Xers, 25% of purchases occurred in 20 and 21, and Gen Z, 62. This is why their rates are higher. Purchases occurred in 22 and 23. Mid 22, we had already saw those rates starting to go up. Refinance potential. Listen, if you're a lender, you're thinking you might use a PropStream or some other, something else to, or maybe your own database of where these rates are at, to find refinance potential. That's how lenders think. Over 2 million mortgage borrowers have rates above 7% with significant refinance potential among Gen Xers, 700,000 borrowers, and millennials totaling over 1.2 million. That's how a lender would think. How I'm thinking is these are home seller potential, because we're coming off of record prices that are already showing signs right now of coming down, of cooling off, of flattening out. Okay, we're not going to see, when we see April's data on Case-Shiller, it will not be setting another record, Pending home sales was down in April. Just went over this yesterday. Pending home sales was down. Inventory was up. When that happens, when that spread goes like this, you will see prices cool. I'm not saying some kind of crazy drop. Uncle Billy's not going to be right. There's no 20, 30% drop coming anytime in the data that we have or in any reasonable mind. It's not coming, but there is a flattening. We're not just going to keep a white hot record setting pace, not when you have inventory going up like we have right now. 12% of millennial homeowners moved to a new place in 22 compared to 3.8% of boomers and 5.5% of Gen X. So 12% of millennials moved into a new place in 22 compared to these other generations. That's pretty big. Millennials are more likely to move regardless of their current low rates due to job changes and family growth. So while I see some of these Gen Zers being more likely to move faster, this spotlight here, the May spotlight from Freddie Mac, says they believe millennials are more likely to move regardless of their current rate. I think it'll be easy for Gen Z to move when they are sitting on the higher rate. Okay. It's easier to make that decision. If I want a new house, well, if the rate's going to be similar or maybe even less, in 3 years, if the rate does come down, then the decision's like, I'm going to be actually saving money potentially and getting into the area or the house that I want. That decision becomes easy. But millennials, they're likely to move regardless based on where they're at in their age. Okay. Family, business, they're entering prime career years. So they're likely to move regardless. That's some more data you could pull out of your out of your market using something like PropStream. All right. So there's the Freddie Mac's U.S. economic housing mortgage market outlook report. Again, there's an article on nowbam.com, which you can get for free. Nowbam.com doesn't believe in paywalls. If it's information like that, we believe you should have access to it. So you can grab that. Obviously, if you want the show notes and some of the more detailed analysis, jump into BAMX, obviously, to grab that. One other chart I'll share with you here before I move on from the Freddie Mac topic is total for sale and for rent vacant housing inventory. We talked about this yesterday, or we talked about this last week, 1.5 million units below a balanced market. I didn't show you guys the chart when we talked about it last week, but here it is, 1.5 million homes below a balanced market. You've seen that number has come down since 22. You've also, so this is Freddie Mac's belief, you also heard numbers as high as 7 million. I think this number's way closer to being accurate. Half of that is made up for rent and half of it is for sale. You've seen for rent come down more significantly than for sale because of all of the new multifamily that's come online. But this is when we look at 08 and 09, okay? 08 and 09, we had 4 million transactions happening and same amount now, right? You had 4 million then. This is why 08 and 09 are very different real estate recessions for a lot of reasons, but here's one of them. 08 and 09, you had an abundance of inventory. We have inventory rising, but we don't have near the abundance that we had in 08, 09, but people were in a huge financial crisis, losing their job, just literally couldn't put it together. Difference today is obviously we have an inventory shortage. We also do have more population. We do have more jobs. So it would make sense that maybe we wouldn't be hitting the same floor that we hit in 08 and 09. But we do have the significant inventory shortage. Now, we had an inventory question from yesterday before I move on to this Redfin report about renters tenure. We had this question yesterday. There it is. And here's somebody who says, we're starving for inventory in my area. And I highlighted a little bit, or I have highlighted in the past, the fact that the Northeast is one of those areas that, when we look at yesterday's numbers and we say, okay, inventory is going up across the country. We're now up over 600,000 for the first time in 3 years. This is a significant increase. This is good news for affordability. My argument would be, sitting in front of sellers, I talked about this yesterday, is that you want to price for not Marches and April's, or Marches rather, record price according to Case Shiller. But you want to look at what would it take to sell this weekend based on the inventory and the competition that I have. I've talked about the Northeast. Here's a tweet right here. Actually, Bobby, there you go. Thank you. What on earth is wrong with Connecticut? That's maybe more of a political one here, but here it is. Meet the tightest housing market in America. Connecticut, Bridgeport metro area. There's only 1 in 5 homes for sale in April 24 for every 5 homes in 2019 April. So you have some markets like this, and the comment there, same thing. You have some markets where it's like inventory is extremely tight, but the majority of the country inventory is up year over year. For those tight markets, I mentioned PropStream in the last segment. I point towards using this and identifying some of those people who are going to come on the market. It doesn't mean that your market is uniquely special. It means you're late to the game. I even believe this about Connecticut, which is it's always the oddest market I've ever seen in comparison to the rest of the country. It's always last no matter what. When prices were plummeting in 08 and 09, Connecticut was the last one to really start coming down. Made no sense. Now they were the last one to recover. Everybody started recovering in 17, and people were still underwater in 17 in that particular state. So it just means your market might be late to the party. There are a lot of dynamics at play that suggest, especially rates being higher for longer, that inventory is going to stack up because there's only a select amount of people that can afford it. We see mortgage applications have gone down every single year for the last 3, month over month, year over year, however you want to look at that. That demand in the short term is down. Inventory could break 800,000 this year, which will be 600,000 more than the low of 2022. You're not special. You're late to the game. And what I would advise for those agents is to get ahead of it and start having conversations in their market with people who might have maybe the millennial group who's more likely to move regardless, right? Or with those higher interest rates. We just showed you the charts. You can target a specific amount of people inside your community. I'd be having those conversations. And when I have those conversations, I'd come from curiosity of, where do you think home prices are going? Could I share with you, just out of curiosity, where do you think home prices are going? Could I share with you what's happening in the rest of the country and might be a preview for what we're going to see here in 6 to 12 months? Would that be helpful for you to make the decision whether you should sell now or sell in a year when it might be more comfortable for your life? Because I also know money's important, right? These are the conversations I'd be having now in those tight inventory markets. Hey, let's just walk through what's happened in the rest of the country. Could you imagine it happening here? Do you believe it could happen here? Well, let's go back to past markets where we were later in the game. Okay. Those are going to be really helpful to a lot of folks in your database, a lot of customers that you're talking with each and every single year. All right, let's go to this Redfin report. We just talked about how quickly somebody might sell depending on their rate. We know that homeowner tenure, before they sell is up. I mean, we're talking 11, 13 years, depending on location. The lock-in effect, the rates have something to do with that. Also, just the pain that is moving, how hard it is to move. Nobody's really solved for that problem out there. That has something to do with it for sure as well. But Redfin has a report out there saying that not only homeowners are staying longer, that renters are staying put for longer. 1 in 6 are now living in the same home for 10 years or more. These are renters. Okay, wow. 16.6% rather, US renters stayed in their home for 10 years or more in 2022, up from 13.9% a decade earlier. Okay, here's the other time frames: 5 to 9 years. 1 in 6 did that. 16.4% lived in their home for 5 to 9 years. That's up from 14%. 1 to 4 years, it's the lion's share. 41.8% stayed in their home for 1 to 4 years in 22. That's up from 40% a decade earlier. 1/4, 25.2% of renters stayed in their home for 12 months or less before moving in 22. That's down from 32.2. So that number being down supports the other numbers that people are just staying longer. The unaffordable housing has a lot to do with it. Trust me, we're not 7 million homes short to meet supply at these rates. No question about it. I mean, these numbers prove it right here. I got to live month to month. I got to live week to week. Most people do. And I'm not leaving my rent to go double my monthly number on what it would take for me to live. Now, I think there are some of these that just don't have the education that renting for 10 years versus buying and having that fixed payment, even if it is a little bit higher, if you got to give a couple things up, or maybe you got to give up a little bit of an area or adjustment on floor plan or whatever. Just haven't sat down and looked at those numbers. They might, some people that have been renting for 10 years might actually be like, oh my God, especially when you factor in what they could have bought 10 years ago. Oh my God, all the money I left on the table. This is why homeowners are 75 times more wealthy than the renter. I'd use this Redfin data and send some of this information out to, if I've got a list of renters, or maybe I work one of those, communities where you put a lot of tenants into place, and maybe you can see the numbers, and a third of them like this, or a quarter of them would suggest that they stay in their home for 12 months or less, and you can capture those and make sure that they're not in that 1 to 4 year frame, how much money they would be losing if they get into that 1 to 4 time frame, the 5 to 9, or geez, the 10 plus year rent in one specific rental. I mean, who does that benefit? Who does staying in the same house and renting it for 10 years benefit? It's obviously their landlord. Okay, you're going to pay a mortgage. Your landlords are yours. It's one of the two. And I mean, if I'm a landlord and I got the same tenant give me no problems for 10 years, that's like hitting the jackpot. Okay. The reasons, though, are obviously renters are priced out of home ownership right now. Rental prices have also risen, but they're significantly below the cost to buy right now when you go apple to apple. Renting as a lifestyle has risen too. This is one thing that I actually have a little bit of a problem with. Redfin puts it here. They don't have a problem with it. Redfin's like Jerome Powell. They don't care if you rent or not. They want to do whatever's cool in the market. Renting as a lifestyle has risen too. The pandemic-driven rise in remote work encouraged some Americans to be renters rather than homeowners, so they could easily relocate for jobs or lifestyle without being tied down to a home they own. I think there is a benefit for that for entrepreneurs and people that need the capital to put, or if you know you're going to leave in 2 years, for sure. That's a process-driven decision that would make sense. An educated decision that would make sense. Some renters also choose to invest their money in places other than real estate. That's the dumb argument. Oh, I'm going to be here for the next 10 years, same area, but I want to choose to invest my money in other places other than real estate. I mean, unless you're some sophisticated investor on some of these things, you're likely to lose. I mean, but Dave Ramsey's done that study of over 10,000 millionaires, and all of them say owning the home was one of the biggest advantages they had to building wealth. That fixed paying down a fixed rate, a fixed cost monthly, and then you get the appreciation on the top side, and you're using it. You're paying somewhere to live. That money's going to get lit on fire. This renting as a lifestyle of being cool, and you can use the difference to, the difference is going to get washed out by you burning money on renting. Anyways, that's a whole nother topic. I could probably do a whole nother video on that. But that's one of the things that is increasing tenure. It's something that the government just doesn't care. They don't care if you rent or not. They want to get in, the mandate to Jerome Powell is get inflation to 2%, maximize employment. If they're renting, maybe we have a little bit more control over them. I don't know, Matt. That's a theory out there. I'm not trying to pump conspiracy theories, but it's something people believe in. So, all right, there you go. That's some of the Redfin reporting. I've got a May 2024 housing report from Realtor that I also had lined up. But we're going to bump it to tomorrow. I want to get everybody going here on their day here on the Hot Sheet. So come back tomorrow. I'll have that one as well as I think we can bump that. It's not that timely where we got to do it today. I'll bump that one to tomorrow. This is your only 24-hour look back on housing. It'll still be relevant tomorrow. We'll go through what Realtor.com says. I am pleased, though, to share that I like where the 10-year is heading. This week has been a good week. Okay. Look at the 5-day chart. It's nothing but down. I like that. We're at 4.326. Feels like we haven't been there in a while. Feels like it because we haven't been there since April. So it has been a bit since we've been at this level. Got to go back to April to where we were at this level on the 10-year. And the 30-year is reacting to this drop in the 10-year. 7-11 yesterday. Not the gas station, but the 30-year fixed rate on the Mortgage News Daily survey. It's down from 7.17 on Friday. So we are trending back down after hitting 7.34, a peak number just last week. So good news on the 30-year, a little bit of good news, hopefully getting back down to a 7 even number as we move through this week. All right, that's your hot sheet here for this Tuesday. Later on today, we'll be releasing a new Real Word podcast. You can go right down below and hit the subscription notification bell. It's harmless and it's absolutely free to do so. Check out that podcast. I'll see you guys over there later on today. Until then, or until, of course, tomorrow morning, toodaloo.